Welcome back to another episode of our Mega-lo-Mania in Unreal Engine. It's been another couple of days since I last worked on this. Wasn't able to get much time over the weekend, but I have done bits and pieces, and I've continued to try and make progress on the mini-map and the interaction and display of the armies. It does appear, though, that it doesn't quite work. So I'm going to have to figure out why it doesn't work as I remember it. So the army spawns and there's no icon at all. But there are lots of errors and warnings, which isn't quite where I expected it to be. So a lot of the work is done within the section, the mini-map section or the map section now. Rather than trying to do a generic update call from the map, I've pushed everything into the section and particularly focused in on the update army state call. So within the graph, every tick we're just updating the army, toggle army and toggle center army. Now within the game scenario, the center army is an army by a single player or owned by a single player that isn't allied with anybody, that is able to build a castle on that sector and claim it. So the center army is just a single this one, a single image, if we just make it visible, that's in the middle, and it will be of the appropriate color for that particular team that's trying to, I don't know why it's not disappearing now, trying to capture that sector. There we go. So in the toggle army, I've had to just restructure it slightly. So we've got this update army states function, and effectively what that does is it takes this local variable by reference and updates it. So this local variable by reference just says all the players have none. That's show no icons for anybody, and that should provide a state for one of those or many of those characters, players, and colors accordingly. We then set actually that might be wrong. Yeah, I don't know why that kind of snuck in at part 2. It should be the other way around. The last thing it should do is update the persistent states, otherwise we won't know what the difference is, and the difference is important to ensure the states are correct. So I think I must have wired that up incorrectly. Okay, so once we've got those current states, we do all this logic here, which is excuse me, getting the right image, getting the right animation, could do with a bit of tidying up, but getting the right animation, and then finally applying all that based on one of our 2 states plus the default that we have, default being not shown. So in the update army state, we apply all the logic to say whether we shouldn't show that army, and then update the appropriate state in our army states reference. So our key thing that I've added, or the latest addition, was this check to determine whether there's only one army in the sector. If there is only one army in the sector, we then use this check here to determine if that army is owned by a player that is or is not allied with anybody else. So we're doing this is allied check here against the player state. I'm proposing to put the allies into the state because every player will need to know who is allied with who, and therefore it needs to be kind of available to all the players, and this seems like the right place to put that kind of information. So in this case, we've just got this array of allies, which is just going to be an array of names for each of the players. We've got a simple check here to say if they've passed in none, so if the current are you allied against this player is none, then it's basically checking are you allied with anybody. So if it equals to none, excuse me, if it's equal to none, then we check to see that the allies array is empty. If it is, then true, we are allied with somebody. Otherwise false, we are not. And then again, if they have provided a name, we check if we're allied with that player specifically, and again true, we're allied, false, we're not. It's fairly straightforward. And we come here, and if we are allied with somebody, and I'm keep switching this logic around because I'm not 100% certain of it, but if we are allied with somebody, the owner army is allied with another player, and that should actually mean that the icons are shown correctly, so it should be the other way around. If we are allied with somebody, we won't be displaying this player, this single army, as we've done that check here first, the single player in the center, because when you're allied you can't claim sectors. So if we are allied, we come straight down here to the traditional checks that we have in place, and if we're not allied, then because we're the single army, we should be capturing the sector. So the next part of that was to try and get the center army done. I think perhaps this is where it's going to go wrong, so I'll just clear that off. Now perhaps that's why we aren't seeing an army in there at the time, because we are not allied. So I think that may have been where the issue was. The other thing that I didn't check in this context here is whether the sector was claimed or not, which probably should be one of the earlier checks. So if there is only one army, is all well and good, but we actually want to know if the sector has a castle. So we'll get that, and we'll check that it's valid. If the sector does have a castle, then there's no reason that it is valid. Then we jump straight down to the standard display of the armies on this sector. Just tie those up slightly differently. There we go. But if there is no castle, then we can continue to do the checks for allied state before displaying. So that means in this particular sector, we should always see we should always see the army on the sides. So I have implemented the blinking, and this should all now work correctly. So now that army is active. If I click on this sector, it becomes inactive. I can move them over there. So this is the next state. In this context, the army should actually be displayed in the middle. There's no other players to ally with. I am not allied with them, and therefore that it should show in the middle. So somewhere along the line, the logic is wrong in this particular context. I assume we're maybe getting there. No, because if we were getting there, it would hit that. So let's try here instead. So it's saying that sector 0 doesn't appear to have a castle, and this one should be sector 1 equally doesn't appear to have a castle. Let's see where we end up with this bit. Okay, so we're not valid. So now we want to know, is it the only army in there? It does appear so. So somehow we come down here. Oh, it equals 1, 0. That's wrong. Stop. 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 Stopping appears not to work. Stop. So we actually want to say if the army equals 1, then we want to check this top level. If it's 0, then it doesn't really matter. Might have been where we were getting a lot of the console or the output logs. A lot of them there, because if we were going down this path incorrectly, we'd be trying to get army 0. Okay, so we're still getting an error. Something to do with player state. Get player state. This one might be failing if the player state isn't set correctly in the game mode. Yeah, so I think I need that one. Okay, so we've now got over here without any errors. This should actually be false. So if we resume, remove that and resume, we can see there's no icons. That's because I haven't implemented the display in the center. So we can jump back over to our section, toggle center army. So we only care to do this if there is only one army in the sector. Everything else doesn't matter. So we do if there's one. If there is one, we'll carry on, and if there's not, we'll just return. Now, if there is one, up there, we need to get what the player is, or the player controller, so that we can get the player character, so we can get the color. And in this case, we're going to have to switch on the name so that we can set the center army image, or at least get the right brush, get the right sprite, sorry, for the brush. So need the 4 player pins. So we'll do a sequence here so that we can simply set the brush, set the sprite in this case. So we'll have a simple variable with a paper sprite. I think it's map army. So we set the sprite there, and then we can use it in here. So now we also need to determine whether it's should be blinking or otherwise. We also have to persist the army state. Now at the moment our persistent army state is based on the colours, based on the players, and because of that I'm going to have another variable for center persistent army state. It might actually be better and more future-proof if the army states was not related to the colour but instead related to the position. And there could be some mapping somewhere to say which position maps to which colour for the corner centerpieces. But the key reason for that would be that, as I've said before, it'd be good to have more than 4 players. Now obviously I can't have more than 4 corners on my sectors, so I am limited to how many icons I can show. But I could put a restriction in a game with more than 4 players that only 4 armies can exist on one sector at a time. But because I want more than 4 players, I am actually going to extend beyond the 4 colours potentially. So the centre pieces need to be more dynamic. But I think what I'm going to try and focus on is obviously getting all the core components to work, and then revisit everything afterwards to expand it to handle more colours once I understand how that might work. So, center persistent army state defaults to none. We'll add a pin here and a local variable. So the local variable will be the army state as calculated on this particular frame. And yes, so in the false case, we actually want to set the visibility of our center army image to hidden. We also need to make sure that if the animation is running, we stop that. So we do that in the case. Now what we will actually do is basically set that to the default branch here. This will be active, and this, well, the states I used before, I think. That one. Active and visible. Now if it's active, like we do in this case, we'll just play the animation. Yes, we have to stop it on visible as well, I remember. It's just in case it's going from active to visible, we need to make sure the animation is stopped. Put these the other way around in the other case, so again I'll switch them around just so they're consistent. The visibility to visible in both cases, and this starts the animation. I've got it tied it all up all wrong there, didn't I? One to there and that one to there. Okay, and that, and then really over here we just need to know if it's active. So we need to get the which one did we do before? Owning player, all of that. Equals, and the branch. Moving to the wrong. It's going to be a bit tight. That's visible and active. Bit of a long way to go to get to the check, but that's okay. We can take that down a bit more. Should be all we need. Let's give it a go. Oh, one more thing. Did forget. Just before we finish, we have to set the persistent state. Not that one. That one. We need to set that to this. And I think we've got that wrong in a couple of cases. Just make sure it's tied up correctly. And just here we need to do a branch. So we only want to do this if the state is different to what it was. So if it's not equal. So if the new state is different to the old state, switch on the new state. Actually, I'll just tie that in there instead. Make it a bit more obvious. Then we set the persistent state to the new state. So these two here, at least no, that one there needs to be that one instead. So we're still not seeing it. Shouldn't be far off though, so if we've only got one army, that's true. Sequence of things. So we're the green player, so we should definitely be able to reach there. Let's check that works. Okay, so we're not reaching there. So that's sector 0. Sector 1. That implies that the army hasn't actually moved. Oh no, there we go. We do have a scenario where it's 1. might just be my inability to consistently spell. That's the Green Army's name again. Oops. Let's try again. There we go. It's not a very good center, but it's center. So the icon doesn't change or move. So the active army, get army 0. Owning players, active army. They're saying it should be active. Let's find out if we hit those, either one of those. Okay, so we've got an issue where we're showing the center army when we shouldn't. We haven't got that check in basically. So again, we just want to say if the sector castle reference is not valid, carry on. Should stop us hitting that breakpoint too soon. Better. Okay, so now we're saying it's visible. Okay, so we're not hitting this breakpoint every frame, so that check here, consistency check's working. We have now set it to active. We then hit this. Ah, we forgot the animation. That's probably the big thing. Link center. Did I use the wrong one? I didn't use the wrong one by name. But it is using the red army image. So we just capture army image. Add a track for that. Move that one up. No. I can delete that one. Yeah. That's annoying. Oops. I don't see any reason why that should have crashed. It was as good as this is what it was before. Not quite sure how long ago it was saved either, which means there might be quite a bit to redo. Let's see what we've got with that. So we did pick the game. sure all the player state is correct. Yep, so that's fine. So we fixed the center map. Yeah, so we'll redo this one again. Yeah, so the center implementation is quite far behind. So you have the castle ref in here, but a lot of the center implementation, toggle center army is gone towards all the handling down there. Oh well. Shouldn't take very long to put it back in place. So if it's not valid, forgot what we did. Okay. So we set up the color. We need to set the state. Local variable. So we need to figure out if the one selected is the player's one. That should be there. So it's active. We want to set animation. it's active, we play the animation. Center. Stop the animation. It's either one of those two. Set the visibility. Set the brush. And return. Save that. See how that is. Actually, that's fine. Yes, so this one. This one way around. Okay, so we've got the center. It's not active. Set the state. Set the type. Oh yes, we forgot the branch. Do the check if it's changed. Instead. Okay, so we set the brush to the green one. We set the brush to the green one again. And again. And again. Okay, we don't seem to be coming down here. No, that's okay. So that one's okay. So right click, we are setting it to active. And we are starting the animation. Brush shouldn't change. So it should be blinking. So there's something wrong with the animation. Again. Okay, that's actually like a second. I think I reduced them all down to just a second, didn't I? Some of them anyway. Okay, let's just push them all down. I think this is the cause of it not working, but I need to make sure the animations are the same. So it should be visible, hidden, visible for that one, and that is also visible hidden, visible. The animation looks okay. We should be setting the animation. Not sure why that is that. The other one, start time 0, loops 1, oh sorry, loops 0, play speed 1. That's another point, we forgot to set this. We'll set this afterwards. Because all options will want to set it. So the chances are it's just the again the animation being started causes it to start from the beginning. Yep, there we go. So now our army can move into the appropriate places. It is a bit off center, so I'll just raise it up a bit. Better. It's pretty much what we need. Okay, so I think that works. Let's try and click various areas of it. So the only other difference is that it is possible to click the castle. I think if we place the army back into the same sector, it actually moves back into the castle. But we don't actually have any of the logic for handling the castle and the army in that case yet at the moment anyway. So, what are the states we have for the map? Just trying to get this map to be fairly complete. Don't think there's anything else actually. I mean, obviously we haven't actually moved the army. So we saw a little man walking away on here and the army doesn't appear here. So actually kind of fixing the visual display of the army is one of the things that need to be done. But some people. So there's obviously the change in the cursor, but we haven't got any of the cursor changes yet. Obviously, if you're running away from a battle, then you do take damage to your army. But I don't see anything in there. I mean, I should have picked. I think I was intended to pick one with more sectors, so I could actually take over, or at least look at what happens when different armies are there and they move around a bit more. But unfortunately, I picked the wrong island. So let's just win the island instead. I think that looks about right anyway. So the other thing we've got is we now have multiple armies, which is obviously why the army is now moved to the right. If we move it back, we end up with this scenario of two armies in one place. Now the armies that I have, I don't think they actually consist of anything really at this point. That obviously is a problem. Okay, so we do create some units. And they are passed to the spawn. Yes, I think that's probably not quite right. I just wonder if we actually have any. As we must do actually. The array must contain something. Well, it would if we did that one instead. Want to see if we actually get that passed all the way through. Yeah, so we get the 10. That's what we wanted. So the owner is self, yeah, so that's fine. And we add them to the sector. So we need a better way of adding army to a given sector. We need to actually have that entry point rather than just literally adding it to the array. So we have our sector blueprint. So we have some functions for the replication of the army, but they didn't actually work when I needed to anyway. And I don't think the cast ones aren't necessarily going to work either. So, but let's have a function for move army. Do that one. So we put it as an actual event. Let's say they didn't work anyway. So that shouldn't change anything. was actually trying to listen to those events. But yeah, there's no effect there, so we'll drop them entirely. So I don't know if the castle events would work either, because again there's some issues with replication and timing. I created that function, but I can't seem to find it anymore. We wanted was a function to say that an army has entered this sector. Now at the moment what we will do is basically do what we already do in the code, and that's just add it to our array. And now we can go back to the player controller. That's where it was. Event graph. Yeah, so we spawn the army, but instead of adding it to the array directly, we'll call our army entered function instead. So again, that shouldn't make any difference. We should see the army move around. Army spawned correctly. It does move correctly because we handle it differently in the move anyway. So let's play controller. Yeah, so this is finding the index within the army array for a given army that needs to be removed, and we just remove it, but we also add it there. So instead of calling add, we need to call our new function. That is the sector it goes into. That is the army. Do that now. Actually work the other way around in this case. Better like that. So again, just make sure it doesn't break anything. we're seeing our text here. So now we've got this, we can say this particular army is entering. Currently we just add it to the array. What we want instead this is the army. And we need to do get units, length, I think actually that's not true. What we would want to do here is just a Boolean value. So basically we can, the armies can merge with another army, which means this army loses all of its units, or the army can partially merge, or the army may not even move at all. So we need to know, we need to remove it from this index on two scenarios: if all of the army was merged into another army, or if the army was moved. So that's what we're going to check here. If the army that we moved has no units left, or we did move it, which means there was no merging involved, we then remove it from this sector. So this, the context of this call is actually the sector that currently owns the army. So now again that should behave exactly as it did before. Good. So we now need to check all of the existing armies within this sector, and for each of them we want to get the owner, I believe I put a function into the army to simplify ownership. Get player controller. Yep. That gives us the proper player controller that we want for this particular case, which is the MLM player controller. And now we have that, we want to determine whether it's the same as the player controller. Now we don't technically need to know the MLL, the actual player controller. We could just compare the owner. I think that might be a little bit nicer. Saves the cast in this case. I don't think we need it, at least not for now. So if the owner is the same, then we're merging. So we need a local variable which will just be merge armies. We'll set that there. So this is the army that already exists. So it's this army that we want to merge the new army into the sector into. So we'll just say in here, adds units from other army to this army up to gain maximum, up to maximum unit count. So we haven't got a maximum unit count yet, but again the original sets that limit to 250. We'll probably have the same default, but it will be variable depending on player settings. So we merge that army once we're done, and we'd only do that once. So once we're done, we need to once we finish looping, if we set merge armies if they're equal, we probably also need to branch on that value. Actually no, it's got them the wrong way around, haven't we? We'll keep changing the value if we do it that way. Be this way around instead. So if they are equal, we set the merged flag. We can just set that to true to make it clear. Then we do the merge. We'd only ever hit that condition once because there should only, based on this logic, should only be one other army of the same player here. If we have merged, so if merged, I'm going to call that past tense, it should be merged army. If we have merged, then we don't add. If we have not merged, then we return with moved flag true, so we know we have to remove the army from the previous place. And if we, here we're saying if we have moved or there's no units left, so that accounts for the case we're moving all the army over, then we remove the current army, or the army that we've been given, from this sector. It should then exist only in the other sector. Entered. Yes, because this is the other sector. Okay, I'm not sure I've got the most clarity on which function's called on which sector, because I think we switch over probably a bit too many times. This is on the source sector from where the army is, even though we do have to do that find. But I think that's okay. The logic's generally right. Our merge. So now if we move that army there, create a new one, we do get the merge call. Now the army exists in both places still, That's not correct. No, that is correct. The army didn't completely move because I didn't move any of the army people over. So we want so if the current army is less than whatever the game maximum is, we'll set that to 250. We might as well just use the standard default. That will be variable in the future, but for now we'll set to 250. So if it's less than that maximum, so we'll just do a append. We'll say merge units that might get rid of the print string in the future, but just to give me an idea of what's going on. We're merging units from this army here to this army that we're referring to in this case. Let's see what that gives us. Yep, so it's merge units 10 of 10. So when we do that, we still get. We should actually have two armies. We probably because we don't add it. We don't add it because we should have merged it. Sector. Yes, we're saying that if we do merge, let's get this right. We're saying that if we merge here, but we also need to make sure that we add it if there's still units left within the other army. So I think really we perhaps don't care that we've merged. What we care about is if there's anything left. Not sure if that makes any difference either. Do it that way around instead. So we're saying is if the army has units left, then add it, otherwise return. Now leave that false, actually remove that. Back here okay, so if we don't merge, so yeah, we do need that. I forgot now. Call it merged though. So if there is nothing to merge to, then we will have units left, and we'd want to add. And we'd want to remove, so we have added, because there's still units left. So what do we need to know the merge for? I think if this army has no units, remove it from the previous index. I think that's actually true. I don't think there's any reason that we'd want to remove it otherwise. No, that's... If the army has no units, then it's been completely merged into something else. But it may have units, but have been completely moved to a new sector. So we do need the condition here. Effectively, if we are empty or we have moved. From this context, we have merged. So I've called it merged instead. So yeah, so if we have merged and we have nothing left, then we remove. If we haven't merged, then we move. Yeah, so if we have not merged, if that's false, yeah, so I think that one needs to be we have merged, we've still got some left. If we haven't merged, false, false, false. We remove it. If we've merged is true, empty is true, condition is true. That still needs to be all. Get this right. So merge doesn't say whether we've got anything left though, does it? So the merge basically says we've tried to merge. We may still have some units. So we return true to say we've merged. Now, if we have merged and our units is 0, then we should remove. If we haven't merged, I think, not sure if merged is the right thing to use in this context. Trying to get the logic so that we remove when it is either empty or completely moved over to a different place. So I think we'll have that back as moved. It's that one. So effectively, if we found another army that's of the same player, then we are merging them. We do that. If we've not merged, then we're simply just moving the player army over. So that would be, if we have moved, or there's none left, then remove it. That sounds about right. Okay, so we've still got 2 armies in here and we've got an army in there because we have merged and we've got some left. But we shouldn't end up with 2 armies in there. Yeah, because we've still got some. So the issue is that we did not success. No, that's not right, is it? We should never have 2 armies of the same player in the same place. So if we try and merge, and we have some remaining, we currently add it. I think we want to do another branch. So if we've merged, I think really this is just it's not so much whether we merge. Let's say target sector has player army. It's a bit long. So if the target sector has player army, then we don't want to add it. We just want to return. If the target sector does not have the player army, then we've moved. So long as the army is greater than 0. I think that makes some sense. Though there shouldn't be a case in this scenario where it is not greater than 0, I think. So we only add it if we haven't found one. That makes some sense. If we haven't found one, we're definitely going to have a bigger army than 0, so that's okay. I think we can do away with that. Doing that. That way around. So if we haven't found it, we add it, we say we've moved. If it has found it, we say we haven't moved. So that's fine, we activate this army, click here. We do attempt to do the merge, obviously we don't merge anything at the moment, but the icons stay the same. Try and take that. Yep, so that's okay. So that makes more sense. We don't need that bit. Lined up. I think we can just shorten that to target. Okay. So I think that covers all of the... So one thing that we are doing is we are creating 2 armies. We're just not adding it because we are creating the army in the player controller, passing that kind of through, creating it in the layout, I think, here. on, yeah, so we create that army and then we spawn it, then we enter, call army entered. Now if we haven't been able to merge all of those units, we don't actually want to have this army instance hanging around. It is possible for, in the game, the player to define an army of a given set of units and then apply them to different sectors that may already have a fairly high number of units to kind of top them off. And when they do that, it just reduces how much they're kind of holding. So obviously that's not covered here because we just instantly create that army, spawn army stuff, which does mean that the merging might actually, and the entering might actually need to be done with units, an array of units, not army actors as it stands. But I might have to address that once I've kind of got that bit in place a bit clearer. Some of this might have to change, but the merging we can do. We, I guess, don't really care which order we merge, we just need to kind of iterate through the units from the other army. Now the slightly awkward thing is here is we are iterating over through this array, and we need to know how many we add to the other array so that we know how many we remove. So first we need to check that the target army has enough space. So actually that will be a for each with break. If the target army is less than the game limit, then we continue, otherwise we break. It's true. I think we just want to increment this. Once we've added it. So then we take our units and add the new army member. We remember how many we've done, and then we carry on. Once we are done, so it doesn't look like there's any array functions to remove them en masse. Yeah, so there's a resize, but unfortunately that works from the wrong end, because that will basically chop things off at the end. Now we could have added the things from the end, but I think it makes more sense to add the units that the user picked up first to the sector, so that they're first in, first out kind of scenario. So I'm going to have to create see if we can do this. It's actually slice that I want, not splice. And to that we take 3 arguments and array. Can we not take wild cards? I guess it'll have to be a macro then. Oops. Slice array. So in this case we can now take a wild card array and variables we want, start and end. Those should be single values. So the actual return should be a new array of wildcards, hopefully. We want local array of wildcards. So for loop, guess we need the execution line. actually should be all it is. We are creating a copy of an array. We're starting from the start point, ending at the end point. We haven't handled any of the negatives or going backwards or forwards, so there definitely needs to be that if this was to be complete. But that should work for what we want for now. So we don't add it, we just increment the counter. So once we're done, call our function. The start point will be whatever index we were on, and the end will be the length of the units. The array we want no, that's the wrong way around. That way around. Start is 0, end is whatever index we found. Take it from that array, that gives us a result. So we'll take this units and we'll add this array to it. And maybe that will be it. So this probably could be done a lot better actually, because that's just sums, isn't it? Just keep that. So the maximum amount we can move is the current unit's length or $250 minus however many we've got. This takes the maximum value of A or B, so the bigger number between that and however many we've got. That's how many we want. That's better. Don't need any of that. So we create our first 10, create our second 10, things have gone clearly wrong, so we don't merge the second time. Maximum. Yes, we don't want the maximum. We want the minimum. So we merge the 10 into the 10. So when we click that button again, we should be merging 10 into 20. 10 into 21. It's not too far off. We're just kind of doing too many. I think that's because slice array over here. The loop is inclusive, yes. So the last index must be in an array of 10. Can't be 11, it needs to be 10. I think that's where we went wrong. Let's try that again. So we create that. Now it's 10 to 10, 10 to 20, 30, 40, 50. So if we move that 50 over, create another 50. Really sure what's going on there. So we get the first portion of the array, and we move it over, we append it to the other one. What we don't do is change this array. We actually want to remove from this everything that we've just moved. So once we've moved them, to get another section, I think we need to start so we need to remember what that value is. And because it's inclusive, we want to add one, start at that point, end at that point, set it to the result. Maybe that'll work. Nope. Only moving one over now. It's just, it can't, it's moving more than we even have. Clearly getting errors while I'm trying it too. Unfortunately, I have run out of time, and I'm going to have to stop here. Furthermore, this is likely to be my last stream for a number of weeks, perhaps, due to the Christmas break and visiting family and things like that. So I intend to work on it, continue to work on it over the Christmas holidays as much as time permits, but there won't be any streams. There may be some, if I can get some videos posted to YouTube of significant changes or improvements, then I will. But it depends on kind of what's functional. But there might be short update videos. Otherwise, that's all for now. And I will be back in the new year. So thanks very much, and goodbye for now.